All righty. Welcome, everyone. Okay, I'm just pulling out where all my stuff is at. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining. I don't know if
Good morning.
I'm facing, which way am I supposed to be facing?
Sadly.
Sideways? Yeah, I feel like my back kind of weird. So thank you all for joining us today at the OPAT Commission meeting, community meeting. I'm Stephanie Everett. I am the Executive Director of the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency. I'm also the Chair of the OPAT Commission. The commission, for those who are unaware, is made up of the chairs of the OPAT, of the Civilian Review Board. Sitting to my left is Peter Alvarez. He is the chair of the Civilian Review Board, and Judge Harris, who is the chair of the Internal Affairs Oversight Panel. The three of us make up the OPAT Commission. We are charged with having meetings in the community 4 times a year. These meetings are an opportunity for us to share information that we have ascertained from data received from the Boston Police Department, also to provide information on the work that we are doing at the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, and to hear from the community any thoughts or suggestions or concerns that you have around police reform that help to inform our work. So before I begin anymore, I did want to let you know that the Mayor's Office of Language and Communication Access is providing language services today in American Sign Language, as you can see on the screen. And I think that's all we have for communication. We are recording this meeting because we do post it on our website. So I'm going to run through our agenda really quick today. So we will do an introduction, which I just went through, and we'll do an approval of our minutes from December and January. And then we'll go through our public report. Again, that's where we provide the data and some updates on what's going on in our community meetings. And then there is a moment if the chairs have any, commissions have any things that they want to talk about regarding any matters that are not listed on the agenda. And then we have the time for the communication with the community, and then we will go into an exec session. So if there's any suggestions or comments that are not addressed, you think about it after you leave here today, always feel free to send us an email at opatboards, that's with an S, at boston.gov. So our first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from the OPAT Commission meeting. So I'm going to start with December 6th meeting, December 6th, 2002. Can I get a motion for that?
Moved.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. So the December 6th meeting, no objections from me, is accepted. The January 26th, 2023 minutes. Can I have a motion for that?
Motion to approve the minutes.
And I second it.
No objections from me, so those minutes are accepted. All righty. So I will now move into our discussion on the public report. And again, this is where we just provide some data to the community that we have given over the last quarter. And the quarter that we're reporting on is October, November, December. Trying to find my, which one?
It's in order.
Oh. Just move it over. All right, so first things first is going to talk in the FY23 budget, we did receive investments to hire a consultant. We reported on that at our last community meeting in December, so as an update, December and January. As an update of that, that consultant is looking at the hiring, retention, and promotion of, BIPOC, sworn and civilian employees, as well as women within BPD. And we have since, the end of last month, we did receive an interim report from our consultants. We are looking at that report thoroughly. We will present that report, interim report, to the commissioner in the next several weeks and review what we can start implementing soon to really start getting that work done. And we'll provide more updates at the next meeting. We'll also be looking at taking, and we have already started internally, taking a closer look at the Boston Police Department's rules and procedures, as reported out recently at the Boston Police Department press conference with the mayor. We have recently taken, we meaning the OPAT office, has taken an undertaking of looking at Rules 317, the missing person and children's policy, and hoping to have some updates on that to report out as well at the next meeting. So we'll be looking at all of their policies and procedures more closely as we start to move into year 2 of our office being open. And so with that, those are just some of the updates of the things that we're working on here. I will turn it, is there anything else I need to put out from my end? The last section? The rest is Mariah.
So hi, I'm Mariah, the Policy and Data Analyst here at OPAT. I'm going to report out the public report data for October through December 2022, which was the last quarter, quarter 2, FY23. So the dispositions of our cases that were referred to by OPAT to the CRB were, we had 3 insufficient, that had insufficient evidence, 2 that were not sustained, and 1 pending. The disposition of the cases that were brought to IOP, we had 2 cases. We have 2? Yep, 2. And then October 20th of 2022, the board voted to zero on 2 of those cases where they agreed with the IAB's findings. The number of complainants received, the type of misconduct alleged, and the investigatory status on those complaints. We received 14 complaints as of October to December of 2022, which is down 3.1% from the last quarter. The types of cases that we had were excessive force, civil rights violations, and those were the type of, and then we had some pending as well. The ethnicity, race, and gender and sexual orientation of the complainants were 5 males, 9 females. Orientation was declined to answer or straight heterosexual. The ethnicities were either Black, African American, Cape Verdean, Native, Indian, white, Asian, or declined to answer, and ages were from 31 to 64. And that was for our public report. And these reports, we have to report out on per ordinance, per these meetings. So another one that I chose to put on this report as well were the field interaction, observation, and encounter reports, which include stops as well. So just a brief definition of what encounter is. Again, these definitions are were created by BPD, and I just kind of simplified them so it's easier for the public to understand. So what an encounter is to BPD is defined as an agreed upon interaction with the individual that does not lead to an official stop or frisk. So if you encounter an individual with a reason for gathering information, the officer must document the interaction. An observation is defined as a direct viewing of an individual by an officer that does not include an actual contact with the individual. And for the officer, they have to have reasonable suspicion when they're conducting their observation in order to document like what they're observing and to gather information. And then a field interaction or stop is defined as holding an individual in custody briefly, whether on foot or in a vehicle, based on reasonable suspicion. And then this is to determine the individual's identity and to settle officer suspicion. So that's the reason why they conduct the stop. Next slide. So this is my general field interaction, observation, and encounter dashboard. I do have one that I'm going to report on that is a youth-specific one. And the reason I created a youth-specific one is that I saw some trends that involved youth under 24, and I felt like it needed to be looked at further, and that's the reason I created that, but this is a general one. So the stops by race here, there's 64.28% of stops by BPD were a Black race. 40% of those were Black non-Hispanic ethnicity. 8.38% were Black Hispanic ethnicity, and 15 were Black and unknown ethnicity. And this is compared to 24%, or 25% from rounding up, of white individuals. So white non-Hispanic were 10%, white Hispanic were 9%, and then 5% were white ethnicity unknown. For unknown race, so also too, just to give some context behind this, ethnicity or any identification of the individual that they're encountering or interacting with or observing in this in these reports are not self-identified. So sometimes the identification of the individual can be inaccurate because it's not self-identified. The officer's identifying the individual. And then for unknown race, there was 8%. 1% was Hispanic ethnicity, and then 5 were unknown ethnicity. And then Asian individuals was only 1%. FOIEs by race and age, so there were 147 Black 21-year-olds that experienced an FOIE compared to 31 white individuals. And then for FOIE districts meaning precincts, the highest districts that had documented FOIEs were in B2 compared to West Roxbury. And the most FOIEs between October and December of last year occurred in 02119 in B2's district. And 38% of those were males of all races, where Black males made up 24% and white males made up 14%. And this doesn't include ethnicity. And then we're going to go on to youth data. Next slide. Is this youth? Okay. So for the youth FOIs, again, this is ages under 24. Our youngest we have here is 12. I did put this on there. So we did have one in August, I believe, that was a 12-year-old, but we had another 12-year-old too that was between the time of October and December that had a FOIE as well. She was identified as a young female Hispanic young girl, District A1, which is the Beacon Hill neighborhood, encountered her, and it took place again in 02108, which is the Beacon Hill area. The highest number for youth FOIEs were in 02124, and B3 had conducted the highest FOIEs because too that is one of their areas that they patrol.
So, you know, A1 is downtown Boston.
Yeah.
And it includes Beacon Hill.
Yep, I'm sorry, meant to say that, my apologies. And then per month, there was 385 FOIs in October, 249 in November, and then 248 in December. So it has decreased, since the summer months, but, still, to me, significantly high when it comes to, conducting these with, youth under 24. So that's the rest of my report.
So also, last month, one of the things that we have done and we continue to do is bring an awareness to our office, through some targeted outreach. So we had 3 listening sessions last month. And we had one that was virtual, one, in our office and one at the West Roxbury, BCYS Center, the Roach Branch. And, some of the key takeaways from that was, making sure that, people had access and knowledge of the data that we just presented and other data that we have, and how to access it on our website to make sure everything's available, and developing different ways in which the community can engage with us on policy. So over the next several weeks, we will continue to look at ways that we can take in some of the key takeaways and finding ways that we can continue to communicate our role in the city, in building that trust and accountability and transparency with our office as well as with BPD. We also excitingly have developed and began working with our Youth Advisory Council. They met once in December and again last month. They were excited, little bunch of kids who came in, and currently we have 12 youth. I think we're gonna probably max it out at 15. They represent 6 neighborhoods across Boston. Last month, they were able to set their calendar, so they'll have 6 meetings, I believe, per year. They're gonna meet every other month, for a couple of hours a month. And, again, if you know anyone who is interested, they still have time to sign up between the ages of 14 and 19 to make sure that they lend their voice. And I think they're meeting again in April, and then when they meet again, then they'll be discussing how they want to be structured, if they want a chair, if they want a president, all of that. I think it's very important for them to really engage on how to build up an organization from ground up. And I only ask those who are over the age of 19, if you come in, that you help them, but not take over the work that they're doing. They're pretty smart group. They're very much looking forward to being part of this process. And then lastly, we did get a new intake specialist, Taisha, who joined us last month. So looking forward to bringing her into this great work that we're doing here. So that's our public report. And do any of the commissioners have any questions before I move on to the next section?
No question.
No question.
So I have one matter I do want to address in the other business section. Well, 2 matters I want to address in the other business section. But do you all have any before I take over? Anything else?
Go ahead.
So one of the things is we have, our next meeting is in June, so we need to decide if we want to have it virtually, or, I know we try to do a virtual meeting and then an in-person meeting. I just want to know which one, and if it's in person, where would you, it goes into my second point about where the in-person will be.
Right here.
You want it in person?
Yes.
In person's fine with me.
Okay. So, I don't know if we have a date for the June one yet. Not noticed. It shouldn't be noticed. We haven't set a date. OPAT Commission meeting hasn't been set. Yeah. So yeah, we haven't set a date yet, so we shouldn't have a date for OPAT Commission meetings. We only have dates for the other boards. So we'll send out a doodle just to make sure that the dates.
I have the 15th.
And then the other matter is that there are some regulations that I do want to start setting. I did have a conversation with the director of the Post Commission regarding the 90 days and whether or not the 90 days of the investigation that is set by state statute, how that would apply. We previously had a conversation here about how, while we are not a law enforcement agency, very much aware of that, that when we, as ordinance, whenever we do get a complaint, we are required to send those complaints up to the Boston Police Department to alert them to the complaints that we receive. Monthly, those complaints do go up. Once they pass intake, they go up to the Boston Police Department. And there was a question if, just to refresh your memory, if the Boston Police Department, if the 90 days would kick in then, or if at all. Due to media interactions lately, the director did reach out and wanted to discuss the 90 days with me. So myself, John, and their legal counsel had a conversation roughly about 2 weeks ago, and clarified that the 90 days actually would start to toll when the Boston Police Department would have enough information to, there was a credible complaint, because when we send up information about a complaint, does not mean that it's really fully worked out yet. We just received information that there is a complaint, but there could be a reason that the complaint does not move forward. An example of that could be that we find out once it's gone through to the investigators that, or once they've gotten notified that the complaint is already pending with the Boston Police Department, or that upon further investigation that it's not with Boston Police Department, there's someone else, or the complainant stops responding, as we've spoken about before. So once the complaint actually reaches the hands of our investigators, and the investigators begin to ascertain documentation from the Boston Police Department, it's actually when it becomes a complaint that the Boston Police Department can actually themselves start to investigate. So that's when the 90 days would start. So with that said, I think we can really start putting some of our things into regulations. So what I wanted to do is at the next meeting in June, start to put forward some of our regulations that we've kind of held. I think this is one of the ones that we were holding off on doing until we got some clarity about what that looks like. So some of our investigative regulations and some of the other just definitions, certain things that we should just move on. I'm hoping that we can discuss them at our June meeting and then have public comment period following a public hearing, following that, and then a public comment period for the summer. So just having some time to get the regs done. So if we were to have it in June in person, which I was hoping you say in person, I would probably look to see if we can have it at the bowling building, just so we can start moving regs.
Just a point of clarification on the investigation time. So 90 days when the police start investigating it, like we're not.
They never investigated our complaints.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to like, because there's this thing about like the rightness of the complaint and like when that starts. So like I didn't understand when it starts tolling. So
yeah. So when they first passed the regulation saying that 90 days, we immediately had the conversation. This was like last summer, and there was no. We were asking for more time just because there's a process that has to come to you, the Civilian Review Board, all these other things. So we finally had a more in-depth conversation. And what they were saying is that once the Boston Police Department once it becomes a credible complaint, that Boston Police Department can actually investigate, basically if it came to them, because I did remind them that we have our own investigators that never goes to Boston Police Department for investigation. That's when it would become, the 90 days would start to toll. And so for us, it would be the day that our investigators, so for us to get information, so if we're asking for 911 tapes or turret tapes or any CAD tapes for the police report or body worn camera footage, any of that stuff, whenever we do a whole request on a case, that moment that we ask for that is the date that the 90 days would run, because now they, meaning the Boston Police Department, has the full case. We've already sent them the complaint with the summary when we first got it, so they know what the basis of the complaint is. Now they have their own discovery that they're producing for this complaint, the officer's name. What they're missing is the complainant's name, because we don't share the complainant's name. But they have enough of the claim, the complaint, in order to do an investigation themselves. And because they have enough of the complaint to do an investigation themselves, that's when the 90 days would start to toll.
So the initial, just to clarify, it's once the BPD needs to give us, like, needs to provide OPAT something, like either video or something of that nature, accessibility to their employees, but not when, you know, you have a few discussions with witnesses or you ask for, you know.
No.
Not, okay.
Because they wouldn't have all the information then.
Okay.
Because when we first did the initial intake, we don't know if it's credible then either. We don't know. We're just getting the initial, we may just have, it could be an anonymous complaint that gives us just enough to start looking into it, but not enough to say that it's a full complaint yet. So once we know, once we've talked to more witnesses and we're saying, okay, we need all of this information from you because we believe there's more to this and it's a complaint that should stop moving, that's when they're saying that's the time that BPD could themselves take over that complaint.
Did you feel like post, like, understood the dynamics or, like?
After a while.
Okay.
Is there any statute of limitations? You know, like, something happened to me 2 years ago, can I bring a complaint?
Yes. There's no statute of limitations in our ordinance on when you can bring a complaint.
Okay.
The reason why we do not do, so we notify the Boston Police Department of all our complaints, and the reason why we say, look, if that's not, Boston Police Department doesn't notify us when they get a complaint, so we notify them. If there's a complaint already pending with the police department, we do not do parallel investigations. There is an appeal to your board, obviously, but there is, we're not going to do the parallel, but there is no appeals from your board, so we still have to figure that out because that's missing in the ordinance. There's no due process for appeals in the ordinance.
Instead of an appeal, can people ask for reconsideration? I mean, not an appeal, but.
I spoke to Post about that too. It's
Missing information, newly discovered information.
I think based on, and John can correct me, I believe that the answer would be if not us, Post. Because they're not barred from going to Post. So you can file a complaint 3 places. If it's the Boston Police Department, you can go directly to the Boston Police Department, you can come to OPAT, or you can go to the Post Commission. Post did not tell us, Post is not saying they're barred from doing a parallel investigation. They're not saying that they're gonna stop because you came through the Civilian Review Board already.
One thing I would say is the CRB, if it's insufficient information to make a designation, that I think the commission here needs to make a, like, when's the cutoff, like, if there's any information, but those are still technically open if there's more information that comes to light. CRB typically won't say not sustained if there just isn't information, there's information that's needed or questions that need to be asked, and, you know, in experience, sometimes the complainant just doesn't respond anymore, and things like that happen, and then there is just no more information to make the decision. But if additional information comes, that can come before CRB, and we try not to they're not sustained unless we got a lot of information and it's there in front of you and you see it. Otherwise, if there's not enough info, it'll be insufficient.
I don't know if the judge has this.
Okay.
Give that to the judge. Those are the definitions of the venue board. Those are the things, like even those definitions, things of those sorts that I think we should just put into the regs. Putting into, again, there is no regulation about appeals. I think you're right into how we view, insufficient. There's just certain ways that we can work around through the regulations that I would like to move on. If there's certain regs that you would, either one of you all, like to have addressed in June, I think we should just start. I don't know why I share it through John, who shares it through you all.
Yeah, I would just say
Don't violate
maybe,
open meeting law.
I would say the only thing would be that period of time for those, insufficient evidence. You know, are they open indefinitely? Is there a period of time, like, what are, you know,
I
like.
think it's indefinite. I don't.
It's indefinitely. I think that's the fair way to do it too. I mean, but if something pops up later and additional evidence comes in, especially since anyone can make a complaint, like, oh, I saw there's
especially
someone
if it's
doing.
anonymous.
Yeah.
Some of them, as you know, you've seen, they're anonymous.
And then sometimes the person who is the quote unquote, like, you know, you would think would be the complainant, the person who suffered that harm that someone else witnessed, like, if you can't get in touch with them, you don't, you know, there's a lot of different dynamics there. And, you know, maybe later down the line, they do come and complain. Maybe someone complained on their behalf, but now, you know, they come and complain. I think, you know, they shouldn't be barred for that reason. And I don't think they would be currently. So keeping it open, I think, makes sense. Maybe a reg that says they stay open, because, an opportunity, if there's additional information that comes to light that could make it not sustained too. I mean, I guess it could work either way.
I think the biggest thing is that we don't have an appeal file.
Yeah.
It's that last one, insufficient evidence to make a finding.
Yeah.
That-
You can keep this, Judge.
Oh, good, thank you.
I'm just looking at the calendar. I forgot we changed the calendar stuff around so that we do have dates for OPAT Commission now. Last year, we didn't have dates for OPAT Commission.
I thought so.
Yeah.
I was, like, I'm pretty sure. it's
I'm still getting used to our new calendar system. But does that make sense to you all that we do some regs and really solidify some things so that,
Yeah.
now that we have some clarity, I think what the biggest one was for the investigators. And it will help the civilian review board, it will help even some of the processes that we just do. I know we were waiting for post-commission to do a few things, so the conversation was productive enough that I think we can start moving forward with some things. Okay, and if we're done, I'm gonna open it up for public comment period. So I allow, I believe it's 1 to 2 minutes for comment. So as a matter of, how comments work, they are for you to make comments. We don't necessarily always respond back to the comments. Sometimes we receive them, sometimes, we do respond back, but we do take note of everything that is being said. So, any comments that the public have, please be brief and respectful. Does anyone have comments? We do, we just ask that you move up to the table so that it can be recorded. I pause this one and open up this one. Come on, hold on 1 second. Come on, switch off.
Excuse the interruption. This is the sign language interpreter. I can't hear the speaker. Interpreter cannot hear the speaker.
It took 3 years for 2 different Suffolk County DAs to complete their report, which echoed what Norfolk County did. Wrongful death suit went to the federal court. That judge did not choose to send it for trial. It has to go to the Court of Appeals, going up great cost for the family, of course, and great grief for the family. When I see the 2/3 of the community review board, civilian review board, can open an inquiry, I've looked at some of the officers involved in this case. I've seen reports on them. I've seen a report that showed a sustained complaint by another party against one of the officers, where there's no probable cause for the stop that the officer made, the roasting of a resident of another neighborhood, sustained, and it is easy to put 2 and 2 together, that the kind of excessive force, a non-lethal stop, by the same officer who used lethal force in this case, still on the street because 2 DAs and the federal court passed it through. That this body could learn a lot by getting into a case like that and looking at officers that have already been through internal affairs, the outcomes of those, what it might mean for officer behavior in one case connecting to another. You would find enough to chew on in a case like that to see some avenues for reform that you don't yet see. And that the statutory authority that you work under may have not covered yet. But you would feel impelled, like I do, internally, to do what can be done to get justice for a case that's as much like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, any case in the nation, with video evidence that Washington is not reforming its police department till it deals with the worst. The worst. Worst is preceded by the bad, and bad gets worse, so it reaches this point. There is one simple exclamation by one of the officers involved in this shooting, caught by body camera. That exclamation, not from mixed company or any company, indicated to me that he had the intention to kill. So, the basic rule that the amount of force that's supposed to be applied to get the subject under control, not more than that, just that amount of force. In the mind of the officer, extreme force was what he wanted to do. That officer has a past, recorded past. I don't know why the federal judge, knowing what he knows from reading all the evidence, seeing all the video, he ruled, we do not find that the defendant's Fourth Amendment right to life was violated by the actions of the officers. And even if it was, they'd be protected under qualified immunity. Imagine saying that to an aggrieved family, which is as much as saying, hey, don't bother to come to court, because you're not gonna get through this qualified immunity. So I am, with my friends and cohorts, looking to end qualified immunity and to make every use of lethal force by every police force be independently investigated. Maybe by a body like this, independently investigated by no law enforcement connected people. Nobody. Airplane crashes are independently investigated to see who was at fault. So why do we have an internal affairs and then a DA connected to the police give us the justice or withhold the justice that we're looking for? So I would urge aggressiveness, creativity, and a connection with the public for OPAT. We've got a police commissioner who was beat down by his own colleagues, and now we've got you as the face of police reform, and we're serious with you. I want to work with you. I want you to succeed, because that's how we succeed too. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. So we have some matters that we need to discuss during exec session. So,
Can I ask a question? Are there any organizations that want to be recognized, or anyone representing an organization, so that we know who our public is?
no, they're here for the exec session. Okay. So in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, in anticipation of discussion of complaints filed against a public employee, which are the Boston Police Department, and Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30, A, Section 21A8, anticipation of discussion regarding initiation of inquiries regarding initial staff review employment. We are going to be into executive session. Please have a motion to move into executive session.
Motion to move into executive session.
Second.
And in the same, I would ask that in a motion that we adjourn the public portion of this meeting, so that we will be dismissing those who are here for a public session and adjourning after the executive session ends.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, so I appreciate everyone who has joined for the public session. We are now closing out our public meeting and going into executive session. Those who are here for the executive session, we will take a brief recess so that we can prepare the room for our executive session, and we'll be back in a second.